everybody. We're live now at our first Happy Hours live stream on Facebook and YouTube. So welcome everybody out there. This is my first live stream, so I might have to, I'm grappling with the UI here, so bear with me. I'm Cash. I'm a VR and AR developer at CircuitStream. I'm also an instructor teaching XR development and C# programming. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, skirting around it, AAA, a bit of everything. But my passion is teaching and cutting edge technology, so AR and VR, that's where I'm at. So the format here is pretty straightforward. It's an AMA. You guys can ask me anything. My mate Ozzy should be here in a while, hopefully. You can answer anything that I'm too stupid to know the answer to. And yeah, it's super informal. So just anything that's in and around XR or what you had for breakfast, it's all good. So hit me up with a question and I'll figure out how to make the question appear on the screen, and then I'll do my best to answer it. So let's get some discussion on the go here. I'll start. How was everybody's morning? Who are you calling a punk? Sorry. Who are you calling a punk? My mohawk's down today. Normally it's if I wasn't living in a basement suite, I'd be rocking all 16 inches, buddy. And now I've ruined my makeup. So anybody got any burning questions about XR? How many people out there are involved in XR development? Just get a show of hands or something. I know you guys can't quite see what everybody else is seeing, because we're spread. I think most people seem to be coming from YouTube. So any fellow developers out there? Oh, we got a question. I want to know how AR Foundation on Unity can track multiple images stable. By stable, do you mean you've tried this already and it's giving you trouble? So my AR background is stronger in Vuforia, and in Vuforia, which is very similar to AR Foundation. In Vuforia, excuse me, I dropped a pen. In Vuforia, you would have multiple image targets in your scene, each one linked to a specific image. But if you have multiple ones in a scene, then if the camera gets jostled, because I use a webcam for my testing, but if you had obviously a phone for testing, your camera is going to be moving around. So what you often do is have an origin tracking image too. So what it's in Vuforia, you'd have an origin image, and that would be kind of the locked center. So as long as that doesn't move, everything's relative to that. Now with AR Foundation, you can achieve something very similar when you have plane detection on. Once it starts to detect planes and information about the world, it gets a much stronger understanding of like an origin point. So when you move your camera around, any image targets that have been placed in the world will have a firmer reference of like the origin position. So you should have a more stable images. So that would be my recommendation, is try mixing different kinds of detection, like plane detection with image detection. You might get better results. Hope that helps. Let me catch up here. Dwiper. Started learning about 3 years ago, landed your first VR job 6 months ago. Congratulations, mate. Welcome to the future. What else we got here? Geopolitical thoughts. What's my current thoughts on the geopolitical climate in Syria? I could go on for hours about that, actually, but I'm not going to because I might get fired. Good question. So I'm still trying to process your question here, Mert. I'm still thinking about it. Let's see what else we got here, though. Okay, let me still up here. So Ross asks, is there a social VR platform that currently supports VR controller, analog trigger input, and haptic output? By social VR platform, do you mean an actual finished application? such as VR chat or the like? Or are you building something of your own here? Hey Matt, welcome. Starting class next week. Sweet. Okay, I'll let that question float for a minute. So you can clarify that a little bit, Ross. Are you looking for something that's a pre-existing application that supports those features, or are you looking to maybe build something of your own? Pre-existing one. That's a good question. I don't spend much time on social VR because I tend to be teaching all the time. But I mean, I've used VR chat a fair bit. Analog trigger input. I'm not sure it does have that, or haptic output. I'm aware of a few other social VR platforms, but again, I'm not that familiar with them, so I'm not super qualified into it. Does anybody else here know that? Does anybody else played around with social VR platforms and know if any of them have gone to the extent of having analog triggers, haptic output, and stuff like that? I'm going to raise that question to the crowd here. I'm going to move on to that for the moment. Thanks, Ross. Do. So let's go down some more questions. Not a techie, but here's to learn the lingo and topics. Cool. I guess it was good. Your question: how easy is it to integrate Google Street View or Google Earth into Spatial Web? That's a very good question. That's going to depend on the API, and I've seen it done on phones already. I'm trying to. I'm not sure. It's not going to be so much whether the API can do it, because obviously it can. This is the Google API I'm talking about. It's going to be due to do with what kind of limitations you have using that API. I think if it's available to use in terms of ease of integration, I suspect fairly easy. I've worked with a lot of Google's APIs before, and they're kind of best in class. So I wouldn't. If it is available for use, I would suspect the API would be in the integration would be fairly straightforward. They're very good with their examples as well when they do support something. So I think that's more research required. But if it's available, I wouldn't suspect it's too difficult to implement. Here's another question. How did I get into VR development? That's a very interesting, long answered question. Let me see if I can shorten it. I was a kid in the 80s. VR appeared. Everybody thought it was going to be the future. Then it became a dirty word for 20 years. And now it's back. Not a dirty word. And actually looks like it can pull it off this time. And I've always been interested in cutting edge technology. That's my entire career in games and applications in general. I've been around the cutting edge when I can. And VR is it's not calling it the next big thing is just to kind of is a bit cheesy. I think it's the next obvious thing, and I think it's. I could go on about the future of XR and in the industry and society for hours. Maybe it'll devolve to that at some point. But for now, how did I get into it? It's the future, and I want to be part of it. So here I am. What else we got here? Okay. Oh, hey, Elena, how's it going? Hey, Cash, what do you wish we could do in XR that we can't do yet? User or dev side? I try to treat user and dev as the same thing, because if you're as a developer, you're pretty much putting yourself in the user's position. But good question. There's some really basic features I wish that were adopted, and I've actually talked to a few of the people back before in the before times when I could travel and go to conferences. I've been to several conferences, and when before even the DK1 came out with Oculus, I was talking with some of the product development team, and I kept bringing it up. I was like, "Hey guys, you gonna put a camera inside that tracks the pupils?" Because this is coming from the developers. Kind of, I really want this because if you were able to track the pupils, which is a very solved problem. Like we've been doing this forever with webcams and low resolution cameras. Eye tracking's been around forever. So we have a simple webcam. Probably just one, because both our eyes tend to follow each other, so you don't need one. Just to track the pupils, that would give us kind of possibilities like you could use gazed-based user interfaces. So if you look at a button and blink, that triggers a button. You could do gaze-based level of detail. So you could increase the detail in a scene just where you're looking to be very high resolution. Because honestly, as humans, we only really have strong focus in the very center of our vision, and our peripherals more about color and motion and stuff, and it's fairly blurry. So we could put all that focus on where we're looking, and we could ramp up the quality of our experiences. It also gave us gaze-based scripting. So if you think a horror game or something, have something at the corner of your eye or that kind of thing. Just in general, just upping the fidelity of our experience. That's one thing of many. And obviously, just shrinking a device to the point when we're talking contact lenses, that'd be lovely for the user and developer. Good question. And there's a whole pile more building up here. Okay, quick one here. Why do you guys want to know anything about me? I'm not that interesting. Where did my journey start? And my journey started. I started programming when I was 14 years old. So I made my first computer game when I was about 15, using my own engine because we didn't have engines like Unity and Unreal back then. Back in my day. And I just kind of carried on. When I learned that I could make computers do things for me and make worlds for me, then I kind of just kept doing that forever. I've never really known anything else. So I went to university for games computing, which was one of the first games courses in the UK, and spent 3 years partying as you do in university. Didn't really learn anything. Started a business, my own studio straight out of university. Started teaching immediately, and teaching's always been part of my life. And AR and VR, I've always just been around. It's always been there, and it's just getting more and more part of my life. So yeah, it's the future for me. Good question. Okay. Here's a really good question. I'm choosing it because I don't know the answer. Is Mars geolocation better than AR Foundation and Vuforia with GPS plugin? I would imagine the answer to that is definitely yes, because GPS, but also if you have a GPS plugin, then you've got an extra stream of data already. Vuforia and AR Foundation, as far as I'm aware, have no concept of geolocation. Mars, I have embarrassingly have a license to, but I have not had the time to fully investigate yet. But I know it is much more based around that kind of site. This is your site you're at. So I don't know how it interacts and ties directly to a GPS input, but I would suspect it's more on its radar than with Vuforia and AR Foundation, which are much more kind of just a phone, or they're not really aimed at what Mars is aiming to do, like warehouse management, site management, that kind of stuff. With GPS is probably much more in their wheelhouse. Good question. Don't know the answer, but those are my thoughts. Hey, Jacob. I hope you enjoyed the class. What are the first steps to bring a finished VR game app to market? Very good question. It's going to depend quite a bit on what platform you're aiming at. If you're, for instance, say you're using Quest, which is probably the most popular platform to release on right now. If you were using Quest, at the moment, the Quest store, if you go down the official Quest store, is quite curated by Oculus. So it's a little tricky to get in there. But as of 2 weeks ago, they've announced that they're going to be having like the next iteration of their store, which is much more like the Steam store on PC, which is much more open. The vetting process is fairly automated, so that it's not handpicked by people. Some person will still have to sign it off, but give it the green light. But they're hoping to open up, like really blow up their market to hundreds and hundreds of apps instead of just the dozen or so that they really have, or a few dozen that they have right now. At that point, I think I'm not sure what those steps will be, but I suspect they'll be a lot simpler than they are now. So that's coming very soon. So that's for the Oculus market. For other headsets, then you're likely looking at Steam or potentially SideQuest as well for Oculus. SideQuest is basically its own marketplace. So have a look at that too. That's much easier to get something to load on there, and it's a proper marketplace. You can sell your products. So first steps would be, I guess, well, make sure your app's ready for release. Obviously, that's the first step, and start investigating if there's what kind of hoops you have to jump through for each of these different release options. There's bound to be good guides, and if you can find someone who's gone through that process, those are gold dust, because there's usually stuff that's not in the documents that might help you out. So that's my recommendation. Find someone who's done it before, or otherwise just choose a platform and see what onboarding process they have. Good question. Okay, I'm trying to catch up here. So there's quite a few. Yeah, that's got the hand. Barbara asks again, if adding to AR next to painting museum using Mars or other AR app. Yeah, I would imagine so. So the question is, could you use, and say you're in a gallery and you have a painting, using Mars or another augmented reality framework, could you use the painting itself as a marker? I would say yes. It would depend on the painting. I mean, imagine if it was extremely minimalist painting. I can't name a few names, but I'm not going to. But some modern art might be a little harder to track than others. But if you're dealing with a painting with a fair amount of detail, then yeah, I'd imagine that would be an ideal candidate for tracking. It will completely depend on the piece of art, though. If it's a sculpture, obviously that's going to be more difficult. There is object tracking, but it's a more difficult endeavor to track that than something that's more two-dimensional. Failing all that, I think a classy-looking XR code right next to it is probably your best bet for something like that. Because then you can have your really minimalist art that would have trouble being detected otherwise. So yeah, QR codes, your safe bet, but certainly for a lot of art, they make ideal tracking markers. Thanks for the question. All right. I'm raising this one. This is another one I'm not sure if I have the answer to, but someone's got to jump, so I'll give it a shot. I wanted to know what the best solution for VR spatial audio is in Unity. Is Deer VR worth the investment, or should I look for another solution? I'm afraid I don't know what Deer VR is, but it is now going down my list because I'm actually going to be doing some spatial audio stuff soon, and thanks for that. Deer VR I can't comment on because I've not looked at that. Spatial audio, I mean, beyond, again, I bring this because I kind of want this question to be seen by everybody because someone might have a comment here. I currently am just using the audio Unity provides. I know that's not good enough for the kind of experiences we're aiming for here. So I can't give you an answer on that one, but I definitely want to look into this Deer VR. Is it Deer? Sorry, can't help myself. Is it expensive? Because if it's a, I'll look at that. And I'd get to know to the question. Oh wow, there's millions of them. Okay. Next question down. Sarah BH. Could VR skill sets knowledge be used to enter aerospace domain? Is there a roadmap to enter any specific domain by leveraging VR skills without having any prior experience in the industry itself? That's a good question. I think what you're kind of dealing with in this kind of case is for domains like aerospace, their primary interest, I suspect, at this point in where VR and XR is training, and training and simulation in general. And if you can improve yourself as being able to create, doesn't matter if it's their domain, but if you can prove that you can create a very specific training simulation for a domain, then I would suspect, like, just basically proving that you're flexible enough to do that, then I would suspect that would rate you very highly. If I were hiring in that industry, I wouldn't. If I saw someone who could demonstrate that they can easily put themselves in another product domain and create a training solution or whatever solution they're looking for, that I would rate more highly than previous experience in that industry specifically. If someone can prove that they're adaptable, that I think is far more valuable than having like aerospace experience, for instance. So proving yourself to be more agile and being able to adapt to any domain, I think is your best bet there. Good question. This question here. A big scramble. What learning path do you suggest to become more familiar with VR? Any boot camps you recommend to learn how to build a space? Presuming no coding with no experience. I mean, I am obliged by contract to obviously mention what we do here at Circuit Stream while I dig around for some poignant links. I'm going to throw a couple links here in. Actually, maybe Dion, if you don't mind popping in both Facebook and YouTube the links to our workshops. If you got a moment there, we provide free workshops for kind of like little tasters, and then we also provide courses too. So we have one of the courses I teach is a 10-week course. It's called XR Development in Unity, and it requires no coding experience, no previous experience whatsoever. It even comes with a headset. So as long as you've got a computer and a brain, then you can learn. So yeah, we provide those too. I mean, I'm not going to say we're the only ones in the industry doing it, but circuitstream.com, check us out. And do shop around. I'm sure there's some other good options, but we're pretty great. Okay, here's a question. What was your best AR app? Looking for inspiration. I'll be honest, I'm more of a VR guy myself. I'm dabbling in AR because it's fascinating. Best AR app. Of the ones I've made, I'm a big space nerd, so I made like a rocket launching simulator. So you'd set up like the rocket launch pad and then get it all ready and you have a countdown and launch off into space. I really enjoyed making that. But in terms of inspiration, so this stuff I'm also looking for inspiration. I am also an electronics nerd, and I have a huge amount. You might even see them down there. This wall here is all electronic components, and there's thousands and thousands of them. And I'm terrible at finding things, so I'm thinking about trying to make an XR app that lets me just punch in what I'm looking for on my phone. It'll go, there it is, take me straight to it. So helping augment my aging brain, I think, is what I'm aiming for next. So if you can do that, let me know. Okay, what else we got here? That's a good question here. Hi, would you know of or recommend any VR specialized publishers? Have you got any marketing tips for VR? That I should know that. I don't know any specific one. I know in the indie game, it depends if you're talking about the game market or app market. But for games, the publishers that tend to lean towards indie games are the ones that right now are able to take the risk on a VR exclusive release, because the AAA publishers, so your EAs and whatnot, they can't risk. You can't really risk it right now because there's not enough market penetration with headsets out there. Although it's getting, if Facebook has anything to do with it, we'll have everybody and their dog will have a headset soon, so that'll change, I'm sure. But right now, it's more the smaller publishers, I think, that are willing to take the risk because they have less to lose. And VR, it's not really a risky business too. VR is taking off rapidly, and anything, and it's a half decent idea that can make it to market right now is a pretty surefire bet. But I couldn't give you any name drops, unfortunately. But I would probably lean towards the more indie scale, to indie to AA scale kind of publishers are probably more approachable at this point. Good question. What else you got? Someone's correcting all my mistakes about Mars. So if you're interested in Mars, check out the YouTube chat. There's someone clarifying things for me. I did disclaimer that I have not put much time into Mars yet. Okay, what else do we have here? I think I've missed half of a question from Ross here. Listing platform. Oh, it's just a lead off from the other. Okay, here's a real quick one I can answer while I'm searching through. What live stream app am I using? StreamYard.com. There you go. That's done. This is a nice, wholesome question. Do you have an approach for finding project inspiration? That's a very good question. Like, I guess it's not. It goes beyond just XR or anything. It goes beyond development, and this is like how do you get inspired by anything? I guess it's tempting to make something that's 100% original, and it really is. It's like that's the holy grail. That's what everybody wants to do. Well, at least I do. I want to make something wholly original. I want to make my own genre. But in reality, you can still have an original thing by drawing heavy inspiration from your favorite things that already exist. So, I mean, for me, I play a lot of small indie games. I'm primarily a game developer, and for me, it's just finding little bits of inspiration. Like I was playing an indie game a few months ago, and they had the most amazing pause screen. It was beautiful. They took this heavy metal track that was playing during the game, and when you pause, they faded a perfect crossfade to the same track but an acoustic guitar, and then they did a low pass filter on it, and then they put a blur on the screen. The whole thing was just the most pleasant pause screen ever. So if I'm ever gonna make a pause screen, I'm ripping that one off. So inspiration comes from everywhere. It's a big question. If I can answer that question, then I probably wouldn't be teaching. Well, I should be teaching. Yeah, it's a $64 million question. What's the next big idea? How do I get it? And I find taking a break sometimes helps too, and having a broad range of hobbies, because you never know when there's gonna be crossover stuff. But very good question. That's almost impossible to answer. Oh, this leads in nicely. Do I have any hobbies? Yes. My hobbies are electronics, obviously computer games. Actually, I have a successful Kickstarter that I'm working on at the moment. It was backed last January, and it's for a roguelike deck building game that I'm not going to plug here. But that's been in development for a while, so that's part of what I'm working on beyond when I'm not teaching. I'm also teaching electronics. I just bought myself for my birthday a kit to make an 8-bit computer from scratch with no processor or everything. It's just NAND gates. So that'll be my next challenge. Other hobbies, I'm a skateboarder. I bought myself a motorcycle recently, so I'm enjoying that, even if it's cold out. And I used to play a lot of drums. Hard to do these days, though. That's my hobbies. What are yours? Okay. Just gonna quickly leave that one highlighted because I think they're talking about us while I look for a question. I'm sure they aren't talking about me though. Actually, it is. It's Mr. Eden. How's it going, mate? I'm sure you're still not talking about me, but good to see you. What do we got here from Jacob? Jacob again. How you going, buddy? I'm working on a VR app that needs a lot of voiceovers, and I am shy. That's an interesting question. What voice effect apps do you recommend that are compatible with Unity? I think generally with voice effects, that's something that happens in pre-production. By pre-production, I mean that's during recordings. You do your recording, you do your post effects on those recordings, and then you feed those into Unity. If you wanted to do more, say, procedural, you had a lot of or real time even, then yeah, there probably is some voice effect assets that you could use, whether they're off the asset store or something that's more cross-engine. There's probably some stuff you can just feed an audio stream and it'll give you something back, like a vocoder kind of thing. If you're tending to do like pre-recorded, scripted voiceovers, then I would probably suggest using an actual audio editing package because they'll be much more equipped to do that in non-real time. Also, or you can just have a few beers and not be too shy about it. That used to work for me before I quit drinking. Very short answer: none. No bands I've played in. I jammed. I just loved jamming. I used to jam in other bands, but and I used to take over occasionally when drummers passed out from inebriation, but never played in a band. Very XR related stuff here. Let me see if I can pan back here and grab some more questions. Oh, Elena, another excellent question. What do you wish non-tech people knew when working with XR devs? In other words, what things do non-tech people do or request that it's irksome? I think this applies more to AR, I think, than to VR. Because VR, really, we can do whatever we want. But AR, because we're seeing the real world, people kind of make assumptions. And this isn't really their own fault. People make assumptions that, oh, we can see an object in the real world, so we must know what that is. And to an extent, we do. We have to, with projects like OpenCV, we can do object recognition using machine learning, and we can very accurately say that's a bicycle. But if you wanted me to say what manufacturer of bicycle and model of bicycle that is, just by looking at it, some people assume, well, if you can see it's a bicycle, surely you can tell what kind of bicycle it is, and they start to extrapolate. Like, well, people assume because we can see the world and understand quite a bit about it that we must know a lot more than we can realistically know. And so I think this is a problem for a lot of AR app ideas, as a lot of them are kind of they're dead before they even get started because they're making assumptions that we have access to data. Even if we could identify those objects to the fidelity that we need, a lot of that data is proprietary. It's hidden away in companies' databases. They have no reason to share that stuff. So I think a lot of app ideas are a bit. Some aim too low as well. It's like, oh, I reckon it's going to be really hard to detect the shape of this thing, but that's actually the easy part. Detecting the model of the bike that you're pointing at, that's completely different. So it's misunderstanding of what can be identified easily in AR is probably one of the things that kind of it's a shame because there's so many good ideas. But like, I hate being the one to shoot it down, but sometimes I have to. It's like we're not ready for that yet. I'm sorry. Good question. Let's see any fresh ones. That's a good question here. Kirby asks, I'm not sure if it's already answered already. What are your thoughts on WebXR? Is it part of the curriculum? So WebXR, I'm assuming you're talking kind of in a broad sense. It's not in our curriculum directly, but it's certainly something I've worked with several students on in their own projects. I'm working with one student who's using A-Frame to add interactive kind of 3D interactive aspect to a graphic novel he's working on, which is a really cool project, and it's using A-Frame, and it's all done through a web browser. So I think it's great. I mean, it's going to be, if anything, it's when this is a controversial opinion, somewhat controversial opinion I have, is that AR is really cool, but it doesn't have an app yet. It doesn't have an app that makes it obvious. It's still well and truly really, really cool, but it hasn't got an app yet. I mean, yeah, there's things like you can play Pokemon Go or Minecraft in the real world, but that's not really an app. It hasn't found itself yet. And until it does, I think this will come back to your question, I promise. Until it finds itself and finds its app, I think AR will just be currently just really cool. And I honestly think that web AR is probably. I'm a gambling man. I'm not a gambling man, but like I think web AR is just as good a candidate as anything to be the one that makes the app that makes AR a thing. And I can't wait for this app to turn up. It's just a matter of time. But WebXR in general, I think it's definitely got a place. It's a bit with headsets. I'm not sure because the barrier to entry with headsets is that you already have to have a headset, and you likely already have all this, have your Steams and your Oculus all installed. So WebXR, does it add much? It depends on the context of the app, I think. But for AR, I think it could play a big part in being the thing that makes AR make sense. We teach VR and AR in the curriculum, obviously, but we don't currently deploy things on the web in the curriculum. But it's certainly something we should support. If, for instance, you do one of our 10-week courses, you also get one-to-one time with an expert instructor to work on your own project. And that's exactly what that's for. If you wanted to do something in WebXR, then you'd be paired with someone who's done work in WebXR. And it doesn't matter if it's on the curriculum or not, because we focus on it during your one-to-one time. So good question. Oh, I love this question. Do you feel web AR and VR will be the way of educating our young people in the future? I genuinely do. Not the only way, obviously, but I think it offers so much more than a lot of many traditional teaching mediums, and teaching is really important to me, especially teaching children. And I think it can offer a different level of. I mean, we've already seen this in enterprise industry. Training is a huge push. One of the main reasons VR is doing so well right now is the amount of money coming from the enterprise industry into training solutions, because it's such an effective form of training, for a platform for training. It's just incredibly effective, cost effective, and retention effective, and just generally effective. Not to mention you can train people on stuff that's almost impossible otherwise. And I'm really, really waiting for that kind of technology to drip down. I think, unfortunately, it may come that direction. It may be a drip down into schools and for our young adults out there. But it will happen, and I'm really looking forward to that. And so, if anybody out there is interested in doing teaching for kids, get on that now. It's the perfect time. Great question. Okay. Speed to a few of these if I can. Any Unity asset recommendations for authoring VR-capable multi-user experiences? Good question. I've been playing around recently with Photon's Unity asset. It's called Pun, P-U-N 2, Pun 2. That is, I'm finding that great. Within the space, it was very accessible, very fast to wind up. Within the space of an hour, I had a VR, AR cross-platform little demo running, and it took like no time at all, and yet it still has the power that I'm familiar with from like fairly powerful networking frameworks. So I'd recommend checking that out. There are many more. That's the one I'm currently dabbling in. So I'd give that a shot, and it's free. There's a completely fully featured free version, which its only limitation is that you can have 20 concurrent users across the world using your app at once, your app ID basically at once. So for development, that's great. So that's that one. Good question. Oh, the classic. Dion, deploy the link. It's probably down there already. Oh, yep. Here's you beat me to it. It is an age-old question. You know what? Most people shy away from it because it's almost a joke question now, but I genuinely think it deserves an answer. Unreal is an amazing first-person shooter engine, first-person engine for making first-person experiences. It's incredible at that. High fidelity, cinema quality stuff. It's great. For architectural visualizations, also great. It can do things that are not high-end first-person or third-person or whatever game-like experiences. It can do them. It can make 2D games. But you do tend to feel like you're fighting the engine somewhat to do that. On the other side, you've got Unity, which is kind of a jack of all trades. It can do the high fidelity, super cinematic, beautiful, realistic environments. It can do that, but it's not its strong point. Unreal's kind of got that handled more than Unity does. And this changes from month to month. I mean, they're constantly moving these things. And I would use Unity for most cases, and certainly at the moment, it seems Unity makes a lot of sense for VR. And I say this because it's some degree of bias, I suppose, but it's you throw a low poly game at VR, it's gonna run great. And when I think low poly and Unreal, I think overkill. I guess it comes down to that. Unity right now, you may notice a lot of the really successful VR games are the ones that play the smoothest, and they tend to have a kind of cell shaded, low poly kind of feel to them, which does not really detract from the immersion that much. And they're doing great, and they don't use the tools they don't demand the tools that Unreal would give you. So at the moment, it's more of, do we need Unreal for this kind of heavy lifting? My opinion, there's more below in Dion's link. A similar question. What's the difference between the two when working in XR? I'm not fully qualified to answer this because last time I used Unreal very seriously, it was with UDK and Unreal Engine 3. So my Unreal 4 engine is limited. My experience there is limited, and Unreal 5 is non-existent. So I can't really comment. I'm hoping that's probably mentioned in the Jan's link, just a couple below this question. What else we got here? Talking about soft skills training. Are you familiar with WEA VR Udemy software? I'm not sure if that's. I'm going to write it down. I am not, which is why I brought this question to the front, because I'm wondering if anybody else is. And also, if people ask about something that I don't know about, I think everybody else should probably see it as well. I'm not familiar with that, but now I'm intrigued. So I'm going to tell you that there. Let's see what we got here. It's a long one. Oh, Chris, is that you? Good question. It is a good question. Okay. Care to make a guess on the success of Apple's top secret AR headset? Rumors are, I think you're thinking about the VR headset, mate. I don't think it is pitched as an AR headset, but it probably will do AR, given it has like 1 trillion cameras on it. It's hard to unpack this one. It will sell. You want my honest opinion? It will sell because it's Apple. It will be a closed ecosystem because it's Apple. It will push technology because it's Apple to an extent, but it will be very expensive because it's Apple. And there's things like Apple's leaning on. This is somewhat of a criticism I have of Apple. Is they're leaning. They seem to be leaning heavily on like the kind of brute force approach to making something better than something else. And that is, so LiDAR, for instance, is very expensive to implement on a hardware platform. It's not cheap stuff. The sensors are expensive, and LiDAR is questionably useful in where we are in with machine learning and so on. Like LiDAR is like having. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people here know how LiDAR works, but just to run it quickly, LiDAR is basically a laser range detector. So it will scan using a laser that bounces back the distance to a lot of points in this field, which gives you a very, 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 very accurate depth map of the surrounding environment. But that depth map has no color. It can't deal with transparencies. It doesn't. Just by having no color, you can't throw that information at a regularly trained machine learning neural network and expect results, because it doesn't have any color, has no context. It's missing a lot of context, and a lot of all that context and all that fidelity it provides, a lot of that is important. Once you have the context, machine learning can fill in more blanks than LiDAR is doing with hardware. This is a kind of a controversial opinion as well, but I think LiDAR is an example of them. They're not investing in making things cheap and good. They're investing in making things good but expensive to get there. It's why I call it like kind of the brute force approach. But I do think, yes, it'll be expensive. It'll be amazing, I'm sure. But it will be definitely a closed ecosystem. I mean, they've not changed that for the iPhone, so I don't see why they'd start with a $3,000 headset either. Good question, though. Do I have a background in photography? Do you feel photography knowledge is a plus in learning AR and VR? I don't have a background in photography at all. My mother was a professional photographer, so I've lived around photography for most of my life, and I find it fascinating. I kind of wish I had picked up a camera when I was younger. I did not. I picked up virtual cameras instead. But I honestly think photography knowledge applies to so much in the arts in general. And yes, VR and AR are the arts. They are in there. And anything to do with like f-stops, exposures, any kind of field of view stuff, you see that literally mapped in Unity or whatever engine you're using, you're going to see those same numbers. If you understand what they do, it gives you a helps you along the way to make a realistic looking experience. And like photography in general, how to create like I guess it depends what kind of photography you're doing, but like if you're trying to instill an emotion using photography, that is completely present in computer games, specifically computer games, is we are trying to create emotion, and you're doing the same thing in photography. So there's more crossover than you'd think, I believe. So good question. These are all great questions. Even the Unity versus Unreal ones. Let's see if I missed any here. I think I got them all. Okay, bring me some questions. I'll start rambling again. Well, this is a happy hour, so I'm going to celebrate with a 0% alcohol beer. Cheers, everyone. Fake. I've got a question for you guys. Is anybody that have a project they're working on right now that they can talk about? Obviously, there's going to be some hush-hush out there. But does anybody have something that they're working on right now that's XR related that they'd like to share a bit about? Because I'm always perpetually curious about what's going on out there. I mean, I read the news and stuff, but that's not the good stuff. It's not the indie stuff that I seek. We got another question here. A big scramble again. What is the upper limit file size one should consider in the creation of a space? Okay, so I'm assuming you mean kind of if you had a scene, like your environment, that has to be downloaded to a device to see. I'm assuming you mean VR in this case. That's going to depend on... Hey, Ozzy's in the house. It's going to depend on the device. If you're making an environment for, say, an Oculus Quest, then there's a good chance that's going to be on a Wi-Fi network. So download size is only limited in that case by its onboard storage, which is fairly plentiful. I would say if you're starting to push environment sizes of like over 1 gigabyte, then that's not only is the download going to be take some time, but also that's going to start taking significant chunks out of their onboard storage. So I still think it's a good idea to lean toward optimized file sizes, environment sizes, to not have this kind of enormous, like, yeah, here's London, 20 gig. But I don't think there's an upper limit. The upper limit would be obviously the physical limit of how much you can fit on the device. That's the upper limit. The limit one to consider would be, is it worth it to them? If it's like 1 gigabyte download, they gotta want it. But I wouldn't say that the download speeds are as relevant, given that if it's on a headset, it's going to be, at least at this point, it'll be running off Wi-Fi. So good question there. There's going to be one of these, wasn't there? You know what? I'm full of controversial opinions today. I have played it, and I enjoy it. I think it's great. It crashes out a lot. The new patch helped a bit, but I'm running on a PC, so disclaimer there. No, I like it. I think it's got so much detail. You can just sit there and just bask in it. Well, that's the whole conversation. Just kind of wash over you. It's lovely. Well, that's the kind of game I like, just to soak up the environment. I'm just disappointed in the games community sending death threats to people. That's what I'm disappointed in. Yeah, Ozzy, get a link out there for your spellcasting. Get some teasers. We want animated GIFs. This session is recorded. Yep, we're on YouTube, so it's being recorded on YouTube. So if you want to put yourself through this suffering again, you can. There's nothing wrong with my Quest, okay? I teach using this thing all day, so my link cable, here's a heads up, with the Quest, the link cable on the side, at least the Quest 3, if you want to be doing Unity development, you need a link cable in there the whole time, right? And it's very easy to get it jostled, and you have to restart your app. You got to restart the Oculus software. You got to restart. Sometimes you have to restart your headset. It's a hassle. So yeah, electrical tape, lots of it. It works. Cool. That's some really interesting sounding projects you guys are working on. Actually, it's a good note. It's probably worth me mentioning, and this is kind of why I'm here. This is kind of a push, because we're at CircuitStream. We're really trying to expand our community and our community focused side of us, basically. So I do want to drop a link here. Dion's probably already done this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So if you look at xrcommunity.co, that's our. Oh, thanks, Dion. There you go. There's a little banner under my screen. Okay. And we have a showcase section. Some of this is, the forum is still a work in progress. It's almost done. I think that'll be up shortly. And that's a perfect place. The showcase is a perfect place to see not only the projects we're working on CircuitStream, but share your own, and we'd love to see them. There's some really cool sounding ones. Ross, you got a really cool sounding one, heart rate sensor control and virtual MIDI keyboard, and that's just super cool, straight up super cool. As a musician and electronics guy and VR guy, that's just a rad project. I'd love to see more of that. Nora is working on a team to make a VR environment to help teens manage stress, reduce stress. Not only A, noble as hell, B, very cool, because the crossover between psychology and VR is huge, and I've been following that. And it's actually, I didn't involve me increasing my psychology lingo, because I've been reading a lot of white papers on how VR is helping in that field. So that's very cool as well. Definitely check out our community site, and I would love to see and talk about and help, hopefully, with any stuff you guys are working on. So follow that link. I'm going to leave it on screen and I'll answer a couple questions here. Eden, the exploited versus GBH. I'm not going there, man. Dragon Bud, how long have you taught with CircuitStream? I have taught at CircuitStream for about a year and a half, I think. Just pushing a year and a half now. I've been teaching. I taught universities prior to this for quite a while. But with CircuitStream, it's about a year and a half. Paperlander, what's this? Is this a project? Please be a project. It sounds a bit off. Okay, I just saw Paperlander and I want to know if that's a project or not. Yeah, Dragon Bud, it makes me sad. It all makes me sad. This is why I don't work in AAA games anymore. I did work in AAA games, and burnout is a real thing, and crunch is a very real thing. It's not pleasant. I've seen too many divorces. I got out of there. Okay, I'm going to pop this one up while I wait bated breath for what Paperlander is all about. What kind of data can be extrapolated from activity in a VR environment? That's an interesting question. What do you mean by activity? I'm all about data extrapolation. Anything that can be inferred from usage, I think, is fascinating. So what do you mean by the activities themselves? Because that sounds like a really interesting question. Oh, Stuart, that sounds rad. Stuart's working on a personal project of house and techno warehouse party. Of a house techno warehouse party with live stream audio input synced with lights and the frequency band amplification. Very cool. Okay, well, Big Scramble maybe elaborates a bit more on that. Pop this one up. Any thoughts on best resources for sound in VR would be appreciated. I only really started getting. It's funny, everybody's mentioning like kind of like sound stuff, and it's not just you. I was talking to a friend just before I started this stream. Everybody's getting into like sound viz in VR, and it's really cool. I only just started dabbling myself, like the low level stuff, reading the actual samples coming back from the audio engine in Unity, and making decisions based on that. It's really cool. Something like that bandpass stuff, and then affecting different things in the scene based on different frequencies, amplitudes, like very cool stuff. But my in terms of resources, I've been pretty much just doing it at the lowest level, like just pulling out the raw data from the audio feed and doing math on it. So I am sure there's much better ways out there. But again, I've only just recently started dabbling in this. So this is no doubt something I'm going to be doing more research into. I'm curious to do the same and somehow send me your results too. You can compare notes, maybe in the next happy hour. So good question. I'm in the same boat as you right now. Okay, we got Spring Scramble back here again. So let's say you create an experience for individuals. What type of data would be available? Okay, I mean, all of it, I guess, is the simple answer. What kind of data would be available on their actions? It depends what you consider an action. If it's their movement, what they're looking at, how they're conversing, what they're interacting with, all of that data in your experience, if you control the experience, the app or the game or whichever, it's there. The data is there. So how you want to use that for extrapolation is really down to you. And I guess that would be the question is, what do you mean by extrapolation? Are you extrapolating what they might enjoy? In that case, the kind of what they're interacting with and what they're doing currently is probably indicative of stuff they might enjoy too, so that you could use that to drive a recommendation engine, which in itself is kind of an extrapolation of what you suspect someone would enjoy. And that's basically how YouTube works and how Spotify works. It's extrapolating based on data that it had already. So you could do something very similar. If you find someone, you could be very more, but you do have more options in fidelity of the data you're collecting. You could see like how much time someone spends looking at a certain thing. Like if they're walking through a forest and they really spend a lot of time looking at the birds, then you can infer this person might be interested in birds. So maybe in that experience, you could suddenly start introducing more birds or more a variety of birds and see how they respond. Because you have you have a fidelity of information that you don't really get in most experiences. You can really tell how somebody is interacting with the space, which gives you a lot of control over that. If you find someone is uninterested completely in I don't know, some of your characters who are wandering around, then maybe the characters aren't just not interesting to them. Maybe you can improve on them. Maybe they just want to be alone in VR. I don't know. You can extrapolate a lot. That's a very good question. That's one of the ones that really makes you think. Well, especially the future of VR. This is why VR and XR in general is such a fascinating field to be in, because there are no rule books really for these things. We're all, it's a great leveler. Everybody's kind of on the same plane right now. It's not like some $1 million like multinational companies could come along and have a better idea of how to implement a keyboard in VR than some kid in their attic. It really is the grand leveler again. It's like any one of us could be the next person that figures out how do we do this keyboard thing in VR. It's hard. So I found that quite exciting. We're getting close to our end here, so I do want to reiterate what's on the bottom of the screen right here is that we're really looking for this kind of community out. Well, I can see it's clearly evident in the chat here. So definitely come along to our community site, and we'll see if we can build something. I think it's already here. We just need to get into one spot, so sharing ideas and working together on stuff. And if you do want to take VR farther, or you want to learn more, check out Circuit Stream. We've got a variety of courses with amazing instructors, and hopefully I'll catch you guys on the next happy hour. You're welcome, Matt. There've been some great questions. Thanks for coming and asking them. Oh, we'll get one question. Do I have time to answer it? I may not have time for this, but I want to raise it anyway in case you may have some thoughts about it. Have you seen any innovative use of touch or similar controls lately? It feels like much more similar in hands. Hand recognition is becoming huge. I've seen a lot of talk about haptic gloves. Still in the kind of research stage. We'll see how that pans out as they become more commercial. It's just a matter of time, I think. Haptics are probably the next obvious hurdle that people are already starting to tackle. So I think touch and actual response to touch will be something we see a lot more over the next few years, hopefully. This stuff's all just becoming like not so much if, but when at this point. But great question. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming, and thank you for the questions. Cheers. See you, Ozzy.